What if I told you that the life you're living right now is shaped by the thoughts you had yesterday, and who you'll become tomorrow depends entirely on what you think today? This isn't just an idea. It's a truth that has been passed down through centuries of Buddhist wisdom. Your mind creates your reality. If your thoughts are filled with fear and doubt, that's the life you'll live. But if you fill your mind with clarity, purpose, and peace, everything changes. In this video, you'll discover how to take control of your thoughts and begin shaping the future you want, starting right now. The mind is the architect of reality. For thousands of years, great teachers have shared the same insight. The world you see is a reflection of the mind you carry. The Buddha expressed it with profound simplicity. We are what we think. All that we are arises with our thoughts. With our thoughts, we make the world at first. This teaching seems simple, almost obvious. But when you pause and truly contemplate it, you realize it holds the power to transform your entire life. Imagine your mind as a garden. When you plant seeds of kindness, compassion, and gratitude, you cultivate peace and happiness. But when you allow weeds, anger, resentment, and fear to take root, they spread suffering throughout your life. The mind doesn't just reflect the world around us, it creates it. Every thought is like a seed. What you choose to plant is what you'll eventually harvest. And now, even modern science confirms what ancient wisdom has always taught. Thanks to neuroplasticity, we know that the brain literally reshapes itself based on how we think. Positive thoughts build new and stronger connections in the brain, creating calm, resilience, and lasting happiness. Negative thoughts do the opposite. They strengthen the neural pathways linked to stress, anxiety, and unhappiness. You can see it in everyday life. Two people face the same challenge. One finds a lesson and grows, while the other gets trapped in frustration. The difference isn't in what happened, it's in how each mind chose to see it. If the mind holds that much power, then the question becomes, how do we train it to build the life we truly want? That's where Buddhist wisdom becomes our greatest teacher. Through meditation, mindfulness, and the gentle art of letting go of what we can't control, we learn to step back and watch our thoughts without being ruled by them. In the next chapter, we'll explore how our thoughts shape our emotions and actions, and how, by transforming the mind, we can transform our entire life from the inside out. The transformative power of thought begins within. Every thought that crosses your mind leaves a mark on the life you're creating. If your mind is filled with fear, constant worry, and self-doubt, the reality you live in will mirror that. But if your thoughts are grounded in clarity, gratitude, and trust, everything around you begins to shift. This isn't about wishful thinking. It's about how the mind shapes your experience of life, moment by moment. Picture this. You wake up in the morning and your first thought is that something's going to go wrong. Maybe you're worried about work or replaying something you said the day before. Those thoughts start to color your entire day. Every little challenge feels heavier. Every interaction feels tense. At the end of the day, you feel exhausted and you tell yourself it was just a bad day. But it wasn't just what happened around you, it was the way your thoughts framed everything. Now imagine the opposite. You start your day with a sense of gratitude. You focus on one simple thing that makes you feel good. You carry that feeling with you into your morning. The traffic doesn't bother you as much. A mistake at work becomes a chance to learn, instead of a reason to be frustrated. It's not that your life suddenly became perfect. It's that your thoughts shaped how you experienced it. This is the power thoughts have. They don't just pass through your mind. They create the emotional state you live in and influence every decision you make. The teachings of Buddhism explain that the mind is like a river. If it flows wild and uncontrolled, It can be dangerous and destructive, but if you guide it with awareness, it becomes a source of life, clarity, and peace. Most of the time, people aren't aware of their thoughts. They live on autopilot, repeating the same stories in their heads that they've believed since childhood. Thoughts like, "I'm not good enough," "I always fail," "Life is just hard." These ideas become beliefs, and those beliefs become reality. But what if you stopped and questioned those thoughts? What if you realized they're not absolute truths? This is where meditation comes in. It's not about clearing your mind of thoughts. It's about observing them without getting caught up in them. When you meditate, you learn that thoughts are like clouds drifting across the sky. They come and go, but they aren't you. There are simple Buddhist practices that help you change the way you think. Mindfulness meditation teaches you to stay present and aware. Repeating positive thoughts helps you create new mental habits. Practicing detachment allows you to stop clinging to ideas that don't serve you anymore. And daily gratitude shifts your focus from what's missing to what's already good in your life. Many great teachers and leaders have lived this truth. Buddha himself was born into a life of luxury, but by transforming his mind, he reached enlightenment. Nelson Mandela spent years in prison, but used his thoughts to stay focused on peace and forgiveness. This transformation doesn't happen overnight, but every small shift in your thinking brings you closer to a more meaningful, peaceful life. In the next chapter, we'll look at how negative thoughts create suffering and how to free yourself from their grip. How negative thoughts create suffering. From the moment we wake up, our mind starts running. It reminds us of what happened yesterday, it jumps ahead to what's coming tomorrow, and it fills the space in between with thoughts. Most of them without us even noticing. Some are neutral, others are positive, but a lot of them can be negative. And when we let those negative thoughts run unchecked, they become a constant source of suffering. Think back to the last time something was bothering you. Maybe it was something someone said, or a mistake you made, or something you were afraid might happen. Whatever it was, the situation itself probably lasted only a few minutes. But in your mind, it kept playing over and over. The more you thought about it, the heavier it felt. It's like feeding a fire. The more wood you throw on it, the bigger it gets. And that's what happens when we dwell on negative thoughts. They grow until they take over everything. Buddhism teaches that suffering doesn't come from the things that happen to us, comes from our resistance to what happens. When something upsets us, instead of letting it go, we hold on to it, we analyze it, we replay it. It's like having a wound and scratching at it instead of letting it heal. That's how negative thinking keeps us trapped. The human mind has a natural tendency to focus on the negative. It's something we inherited from our ancestors, who had to stay alert to danger to survive. But today, that same instinct can backfire. If we let our mind constantly focus on what's wrong or what could go wrong, it affects everything. Our stress increases, we lose sleep, we feel tired and drained. And over time, that mental habit becomes our default way of living. The good news is, we can change this. We can train the mind to stop holding on to negative thoughts before they take control. Mindfulness helps us notice the moment when a harmful thought appears. When we see it clearly, we can let it go instead of getting stuck in it. It's like watching a leaf float by on a river. You don't have to grab it, you just let it pass. One Buddhist monk explained this with a simple image. Imagine you have a glass of clear water. If you stir in some dirt and shake it, the water gets cloudy. But if you set the glass down and leave it alone, the dirt settles and the water becomes clear again. That's how our mind works. If we keep stirring it up with negative thinking, we lose clarity. But if we stop, breathe, and stay still, our mind clears, and we see things for what they are. Freeing yourself from suffering doesn't mean you'll never have negative thoughts. It means you learn how to handle them. You stop believing they're facts, you stop letting them define you, and you choose which thoughts deserve your attention. In the next chapter, we'll explore how the practice of mindfulness can help you cultivate a positive mind and build a life of balance and peace. The practice of mindfulness to cultivate a positive mind. From the moment we open our eyes in the morning, our mind is already on the move. We think about everything we need to do, what went wrong yesterday, what could go wrong today. We bounce from one thought to the next without a break, like a restless monkey swinging from branch to branch. And in all that noise, we miss what's happening right in front of us, the present moment. Buddhism teaches that the key to freeing ourselves from this cycle is mindfulness. Mindfulness means being fully present, paying attention to what's happening right now, without judgment, without distraction. It's not about forcing the mind to be blank. It's about training it to be aware of this moment instead of getting lost in the past or the future. Think about how we usually live our days. We eat meals while scrolling on our phones. We walk without noticing where we are. We listen to someone speak while already thinking about how we'll respond. Most of the time we aren't really here, we're somewhere else. And before we know it, the days pass and we've missed so much. But when we practice mindfulness, even the simplest moments feel different. Drinking a glass of water, feeling the warmth of the sun, hearing the sound of the wind in the trees. These small experiences become richer because we're fully present for them. And just as importantly, we become more aware of our thoughts, so they no longer run the show without us noticing. One of the most effective ways to train mindfulness is through meditation. A lot of people think meditation is about clearing the mind, but it's really about noticing what's there without getting caught up in it. You sit quietly, close your eyes, and focus on your breathing. Almost immediately, thoughts will start popping up. You'll remember something you forgot to do. You'll wonder how much time has passed. That's normal. The practice is in noticing when your mind has wandered and gently bringing it back to the breath. Each time you do this, you're strengthening your ability to stay present. But mindfulness isn't just for meditation. You can practice it anytime, anywhere. When you're eating, focus on the taste and texture of the food. When you're walking, feel each step. Notice the ground beneath your feet. When you're with someone, give them your full attention. No phone, no distractions, just presence. The effects are powerful. Science shows that mindfulness reduces stress, sharpens focus, and increases feelings of well-being. But beyond the science, it changes your relationship with your own mind. You stop reacting automatically to everything. You stop being a prisoner of your emotions. You learn to observe what's happening without needing to control it. One Zen teacher said the mind is like a lake. When the water is stirred up, you can't see anything clearly. But when it's still, everything becomes clear. Mindfulness is what brings that stillness. In the next chapter, we'll look at real-life examples of how people have transformed their lives through mental training. Proof that this isn't just theory, but something anyone can experience for themselves. Practical examples of mental transformation in everyday life. All these ideas about the power of thoughts and mindfulness sound inspiring. But how do they work in real life? How do these teachings help when you're stuck in traffic, dealing with a tough conversation, or feeling overwhelmed by everything going on? That's where the practice becomes real, when it's part of your everyday life, not just something you read about. Take the example of someone having a stressful day at work. Deadlines are piling up, things aren't going as planned, and pressure is building. Normally, your thoughts start racing. I'm not good enough. I'll never get this done. This always happens to me. Those thoughts fuel frustration and make the situation feel worse. But with mindfulness, something different can happen. You notice the pattern. You catch yourself thinking those things. You take a deep breath. Instead of feeding the negativity, you focus on one simple action you can take right now. You bring your attention to what's in front of you, and you move forward calmly. It's not that the situation disappears, but the way you experience it changes completely. Or think about an argument with someone close to you. The usual reaction is to defend yourself, to raise your voice, to prove you're right. But when you're mindful, you pause. You feel the anger rising, but you don't act on it. You listen, not just to their words, but to their feelings. You respond with calm instead of reacting with emotion. That moment of awareness can prevent a fight and open a space for understanding instead. Transformation through mindfulness isn't just for the big dramatic moments. It's in the small things. Eating a meal slowly and tasting every bite. Walking down the street and noticing the color of the sky. These little moments of awareness build up, and over time they change how you live your life. One of the biggest shifts happens in how we talk to ourselves. Most people live with a harsh inner critic. Thoughts like, "I'm not enough. I always mess things up. Nothing ever works out for me," play on repeat. But when you become aware of those thoughts, you can challenge them. You realize they're not facts, just old patterns that you've been repeating for years, and you can choose to let them go. You can replace them with thoughts that support you instead of hold you back. A simple but powerful practice is gratitude. Each morning or before you go to sleep, you take a moment to think of 3 things you're grateful for. They don't have to be big things. A quiet moment with your coffee, the sound of birds outside your window, the fact that you got through a tough day. Focusing on gratitude trains your mind to notice what's good instead of constantly searching for what's wrong. The core of Buddhist practice is realizing that you don't have to wait for life to be perfect to feel at peace. Peace comes from within, and the way to find it is through training your mind moment by moment, thought by thought. In the next chapter, we'll explore how meditation helps clear and purify the mind, breaking old patterns and making space for a calmer, more balanced life. The importance of meditation in purifying the mind. Meditation is often seen as something reserved for monks sitting in silence on a mountaintop, but the truth is, it's one of the most practical tools we have for everyday life. It's not just about finding moments of peace or relaxation, though that's part of it. Meditation is about understanding your mind, clearing away the noise, and reconnecting with a deeper sense of clarity and balance. In Buddhism, meditation isn't a ritual. It's a way to purify the mind. Over time, our thoughts accumulate like dust on a window. Old fears, past regrets, judgments about ourselves and others, layer upon layer until we can't see clearly anymore. Meditation is the act of wiping the glass clean. It allows us to see things as they are, not as we imagine or fear them to be. Think about how often your mind gets cluttered. You wake up and immediately start thinking about everything you have to do, emails to answer, tasks to complete, problems to solve. On top of that, your mind pulls you into the past, mistakes you made, things you wish you had done differently, and then there's the future, full of worry and uncertainty. It never stops. The mind jumps from one thing to another, often without a single moment of stillness. This constant mental activity isn't just exhausting. It clouds your judgment, makes you reactive instead of thoughtful, and pulls you away from the present moment where life is actually happening. Meditation teaches you how to slow all of that down. When you sit quietly and focus on your breathing, you create space. Space between thoughts, space between reactions, space to see yourself and your life with fresh eyes. You realize that the endless chatter in your mind isn't who you are. It's just noise. And the more you practice, the easier it becomes to let that noise settle, like dust sinking to the bottom of a still pond. One of the simplest forms of meditation is breathing meditation. You sit comfortably, close your eyes, and bring your attention to your breath. You don't need to control it. Just notice it. Slow, steady, your mind will wander. That's normal. It's part of the process. Every time you notice your mind drifting, thinking about what's for dinner, remembering a conversation, worrying about tomorrow, you gently bring it back to the breath. No judgment, no frustration, just return. Over time, this act of returning builds a mental muscle. You become more present, more aware. And then something interesting happens. The clarity you find in meditation starts to show up in your daily life. You catch yourself before you react in anger. You notice when your mind starts spinning stories about failure or fear. You become more patient, more kind, and more connected. There's also something deeply healing about meditation. Modern science confirms what Buddhist practitioners have known for centuries. Meditation reduces stress hormones in the body, lowers blood pressure, improves sleep, and boosts your immune system. But beyond the physical benefits, meditation helps heal emotional wounds. It gives you the space to process feelings that you've buried or ignored. It lets you observe your pain without being consumed by it. And you don't need hours every day to experience this. Even 5 or 10 minutes of consistent practice can make a difference. The key is consistency, not perfection. Sitting quietly for a few minutes each day is better than waiting for the perfect time to meditate for an hour and never doing it. In Buddhist practice, there's a saying, if you don't have time to meditate for 10 minutes, then you need to meditate for an hour. It's a reminder that the busier and more chaotic life feels, the more important it is to slow down and clear the mind. Meditation can also be done in movement. Walking meditation is a powerful practice where each step becomes an anchor to the present moment. You walk slowly, feeling each movement of your feet. You become aware of your body, your breath, the ground beneath you. It's a moving meditation that can be done anywhere, in a park, in your home, even on your way to work. For some, chanting or focusing on a mantra becomes a form of meditation. Repeating a word or phrase helps focus the mind and keeps it from wandering. It's another way to create rhythm and stillness in a world full of distractions. Ultimately, meditation isn't about escaping life. It's about engaging with it more fully. A clear mind allows you to experience life with less fear and more openness. It gives you the strength to handle challenges with calm and the wisdom to appreciate the simple, quiet moments. Many people who commit to meditation describe a shift that's hard to explain until you feel it yourself. Life doesn't necessarily get easier, but your way of relating to it changes. You feel less pushed around by circumstances. You're no longer a prisoner of your own thoughts. You stand in the center of your life with clarity and peace, no matter what's happening around you. In the next chapter, we'll hear the stories of people who have transformed their lives by embracing these practices. Real experiences that show it's possible for anyone to change their mind and their life, starting from within. Testimonies of people who have changed their lives through Buddhism. The wisdom of Buddhism has touched millions of lives across centuries. But these aren't just stories from ancient times or distant monasteries. They are real experiences from ordinary people who've used these teachings to bring peace and transformation into their daily lives. Their journeys show that change isn't reserved for the few. It's something we can all experience when we take the time to understand and train our minds. Take Maria's story, for example. For years, she struggled with anxiety. Every day felt like a race against her own fears. She worried constantly about her job, her relationships, her future. Her mind was always spinning, never resting. One day, after a particularly difficult episode, she decided to try meditation. At first, it was frustrating. She couldn't sit still, and her mind wouldn't quiet down. But she kept going. Little by little, she started to notice a difference. She became more aware of her thoughts. She realized she didn't have to believe every fearful idea her mind produced. Over time, she found that she could breathe through her anxiety, observe it without being overwhelmed. Today, Maria still has challenges, but she no longer feels controlled by them. She lives with more ease, more presence, and a sense of freedom she never thought possible. Then there's Javier. For most of his life, he struggled with anger. The smallest things could set him off. A careless comment, a traffic jam, a disagreement at work. His relationships suffered. He often felt guilty after outbursts, but it seemed impossible to break the cycle. It wasn't until a friend introduced him to mindfulness meditation that things began to change. In meditation, Javier learned to recognize the moment when anger was just beginning to rise. Instead of reacting, he practiced pausing, breathing, observing. At first it was hard. The habit of reacting was strong, but slowly he noticed he could create space between the feeling and his response. That space made all the difference. Now, Javier approaches situations with more patience. His relationships have improved, and he's found a sense of calm he once thought was out of reach. These stories aren't rare. Around the world, people are using Buddhist practices to overcome stress, fear, and emotional pain. Some find relief from depression, others heal from trauma. Many simply learn to live with more joy and awareness. It doesn't require a special talent or a perfect life. It just requires the willingness to look inward and practice. There's Daniel, a man who spent most of his life chasing success and material wealth. No matter how much he achieved, it never felt like enough. The constant striving left him empty. Then he discovered Buddhist teachings on impermanence and non-attachment. He realized he had been tying his happiness to things that could never truly satisfy him. Through meditation and reflection, Daniel learned to appreciate what he had instead of always craving more. He found fulfillment in simplicity, in the quiet moments of life he used to overlook. Or Sarah, who struggled with grief after losing a loved one. For a long time, she felt stuck in sadness and couldn't imagine moving forward. A meditation group introduced her to the Buddhist idea of embracing suffering with compassion. She learned to sit with her pain instead of resisting it. Slowly, the heavy weight of grief softened. She found peace, not by forgetting her loss, but by holding it gently and allowing herself to heal in her own time. These are just a few examples, but they show something important. The mind can change. No matter how stuck you feel, no matter how deep your pain runs, there is always a way forward. Buddhist practice isn't about escaping life's challenges. It's about meeting them with a calm mind and an open heart. It's not about becoming someone new. It's about uncovering who you truly are beneath all the noise and confusion. Underneath fear, anger, and doubt, there is clarity, there is peace. And that peace is available to anyone willing to practice. In the next chapter, we'll explore simple, practical ways to keep your mind calm, your heart open, and your life moving in a positive direction. Small daily habits that nourish a pure mind and a meaningful life. Remember, changing the mind doesn't happen overnight. It's a gentle, gradual process that asks for patience, steady effort, and consistent practice. The beautiful truth is, even small intentional steps can create profound change in how you experience life. A peaceful and clear mind isn't about avoiding problems or pretending everything's perfect. It's about learning to respond with wisdom instead of reacting from emotion. And with time, practice, and compassion, this way of living doesn't just become easier. It becomes your natural state. One of the most powerful habits you can cultivate is beginning each day with intention. Before you rush into the noise of the morning, pause. Take a few slow breaths and gently ask yourself, what kind of energy do I want to bring into today? Your intention could be as simple as staying present, being patient, or appreciating the small moments. How you begin your day sets the tone for everything that follows. When you start with calmness and awareness, that peace naturally flows into every interaction and every thought that comes after. Another deeply transformative habit is gratitude. The mind often leans toward what's missing, what's wrong, what's lacking. But when we train it to notice what's good, a kind word, a moment of quiet, the warmth of sunlight, our entire perspective begins to shift. Each night, before you sleep, take a moment to reflect on 3 simple things you're grateful for. Over time, this small practice gently rewires the brain, guiding it toward positivity instead of dwelling in negativity. And remember, what we feed the mind matters. The thoughts you allow in, through what you read, watch, or discuss, shape the world within you. If we constantly consume negativity, whether through news, social media, or unkind conversations, that energy seeps into our consciousness. Be as mindful of your mental diet as you are of your physical one. Choose content, people, and experiences that uplift your spirit and bring clarity to your mind. What you allow in determines the peace you carry within. Learning to let go of what we can't control is one of the most important skills we can develop. A lot of our suffering comes from resistance, from wishing life were different than it is. But some things will always be outside our control. Instead of spending energy on anger or worry, we can choose acceptance. Acceptance doesn't mean giving up or avoiding effort. It simply means we stop fighting against reality. When we let go of resistance, we begin to move with life instead of against it. Meditation is another powerful way to calm and clear the mind. It doesn't require long hours of silence. Even 5 or 10 minutes a day can create a real shift. What matters most is consistency. Just as exercise strengthens the body, meditation strengthens the mind. It helps us create space between our thoughts and reactions, allowing us to respond with more clarity and calm. The people around us also shape the peace within us. Spending time with those who uplift, inspire, and encourage growth helps nourish our well-being. At the same time, it's just as important to be mindful of the energy we bring into our relationships. Offering kindness, truly listening, and being fully present not only help others, they also nurture our own inner peace and connection. Another powerful habit for transformation is self-awareness. Real change begins when we start observing our inner dialogue, the way we speak to ourselves, and the beliefs we quietly carry. Many of us live with limiting thoughts that have repeated in our minds for years, unchallenged. But the moment we become aware of these patterns, we gain the power to shift them. We begin to realize that we are not our mistakes, fears, or doubts. Beneath all of that lies something steady, strong, and unbreakable, our true self. Taking time for silence and reflection is equally important. In a world that constantly demands our attention, stepping away from the noise, even for a few minutes, can bring profound clarity. Whether it's sitting quietly in nature, journaling, or simply taking a few deep, mindful breaths, these small pauses reset the mind and bring us back to peace. Having a pure mind doesn't mean we never feel stress, sadness, or anger. It means learning to move through these emotions without becoming trapped by them. It's about choosing where to place our focus, what to feed our mind, and how to engage with the world around us. Every thought, every choice, and every moment of awareness brings us closer to a more peaceful and meaningful life. The journey isn't about perfection. It's about dedication. Each time we return to our practice, we strengthen the mind, open the heart, and move a little closer to a life filled with clarity, purpose, and calm.